We're taking the door that we picked up at the Habitat for Humanity Restore and about to turn it into something that almost any household could use.
But you can do so much with a door. I've seen bed headboards made from a door, hinged 2 or 3 together for a decorative room divider. The Habitat store where this came from actually has a contest going on right now where they're encouraging people to purchase their doors, turn them into beautiful pieces of art. Some really great entries for that.
Now, what we're planning on doing, though, is turning this into a computer desk. The first step is removing some of the stuff that made it a door, like the old hinges. These things are ancient and caked with all kinds of layers of paint, so Alan has to work at them a bit. And then there's the matter of all the holes left behind by the missing hardware. I'm filling the biggest part of the void with wood before I start mixing up some auto body filler to finish patching the holes. This stuff is often referred to by the trade name Bondo, and it'll dry to an extremely hard finish really fast, so it's perfect for this kind of project. But you don't want to leave too much excess because you'll end up having to sand it all off once it's dry. Because it shrinks some as it dries, it often takes 2 or more coats to get the surface nice and level. While I'm working on this, Alan gets busy cutting down the material for the desktop and the shelves. When all of the pieces are cut to size, he runs them through a router to give the edges a nice little cove treatment. Then there's lots and lots of sanding to be done. Everywhere I've used Bondo, the surface has to be sanded down until the patch material is flush with the rest of the door surface. Alan is sanding down all of the new wood to remove any of the marks and splinters left behind by the table saw or the router. Because this door is so old, there's quite a bit of flaking paint that has to be scraped off, and of course, that means more sanding. We're ready to assemble the shelves and the desktop, and we're using some of the pre-made corbels that Alan found for us to support these horizontal surfaces. Setting them out on the door to put them together really helps to ensure that the layout is just right. To support the door itself, Alan is making a pair of legs from an old piece of 2x6. They'll extend about 1 foot out on either side of the door with the ends kind of rounded over to smooth out the look a little bit. Speaking of that, I hope we're almost through with the sanding. Well, Alan, I don't care how long I do this kind of thing, I still just can't stand sanding. But these little sanding gadgets make it a little bit easier.
It looks really good. And you know, it's an old door. Personally, I like leaving some of the flaws in it. It just gives it character.
Now at this point, we can install our desktop and the 2 shelves that Alan put together, but anytime you're installing this, whether you're doing it on a door like we're doing it or on a wall in your house, you want to make sure it stays there. So we'll be putting some wood glue on this, nailing it from this side, then turning the door over and putting in a few screws. Glue tends to be less effective on painted surfaces than bare wood, but if you've sanded the paint as well as we have here, it will add a bit of valuable insurance to the joint. Since we planned the layout of the corbels earlier, all we have to do now is line up the edges of the desktop with the edges of the door, and we're good to go. A nail gun makes this kind of assembly quick and easy, but because the nails are a fairly thin gauge metal, the screws we'll add later will still be very important. The shelves at the top work much the same way, but we have to be a little more careful with our layout since we don't have a rail in the door to line them up on. To add the screws, we're flipping the door over on the sawhorses and pre-drilling all of the spots we need. Pre-drilling is often done to prevent splitting, but that isn't a concern here. This door is just ancient and the wood is incredibly hard. Alan is following up with a countersink bit so the screw heads will be below the surface of the door, and then we can hide them with a little more Bondo. Now while we're working on this side, we add a wooden coat rack to the door to give it a little more functionality. Now we're ready for the legs. While I hold the door plumb, Alan tacks the legs on with a nail gun before we drive in long screws to hold everything firmly together. Finally, we're ready for a coat of primer and 2 coats of paint before putting this old door to a new use. All right, Alan, this shouldn't take much installation at all, huh?
Well, I think this is going to be as simple as you find the spot and set it in place.
Well, that's a pretty good spot because, you know, in a living room like this, people really don't tend to use it as much as they do other rooms in their house. And to have this right in the corner, laptop, and maybe a few pictures, and then the coat rack right on the back when your guests come in the front door.